Hello, everyone, and welcome to the behind the scenes featurette for the short film The French Assassin with a Bad Comb Over. My name is Chris Cortez. I wrote this film, I directed this film, I played the character called Hick, and I did a couple of other things. But welcome to the behind the scenes for this film. So basically, we've split up this behind the scenes into a few sections, and each section will dive into different aspects of the movie making, like the pre-production, the production, the post-release, so on, things of that nature. But to begin, I guess this would be the introduction would be the best part to kind of explore the development of the film. As far back as the origin of the character. The character was invented back in like in high school, so it was circa like 2003 around there. Like I was a sophomore or a junior, I think. So it was either 2003, 2004, and I think I had like finished a test early or something like that, and I just sat there and I was kind of like doodling on a random sheet of paper, and I drew. I don't know what it was, but I drew a character and I gave him sunglasses because I always would give sunglasses, and I gave him like this crappy comb over looking thing, put him in a suit, gave him a little tiny pencil mustache and stubble, and I called him the French assassin of a bad comb over. And I showed it to my friends, and they cracked up. They thought it was hilarious, and so that's how I created the character. Years would pass, and my friend Brian, he uh, started drawing the character as well at his workplace, and he actually we were on the phone talking one day, and he told me that he and some of his coworkers had actually considered possibly doing a movie based on the character. And I don't remember his pitch, but he pitched me his idea, and I told him, yeah, man, you want to do that? Go right ahead. Like essentially saying, you want to use my character? Go right ahead. Doesn't that'd be awesome? And I always thought in the back of my head, but you know what? I would ask if I could help write it if it ever got to that stage, but it didn't, because basically I didn't hear from him in a while, and what I did was when I finished talking to Brian that day, I kind of thought, well, what would I do for a French Assassin movie? And so I wrote an outline which would become the film now. And I put that outline away and I said, okay, like one day I'll do this. So years passed. I worked on other projects, and I remember I was talking. Brian was at my house one day, and we were talking, and he said, I'm trying to think of a new project to do. So if you come up with any ideas, man, or if you want to like talk to me about anything, let me know. And so right then and there, I pitched him the movie. I pitched him French Assassin. I told him what my outline was. I told him everything because I wasn't sure if I wanted to direct it. And Brian was kind of like, nah, he passed on it. And I said, you know what? I think I got to do this. I think I have to do the movie. And that is pretty much how I ended up, you know, going into the project. So at that point, I entered the pre-production stage. I had finished a movie called Stone Steve, and I had wrapped up my experiment trilogy. And I always said when that was finished, this would be the first movie um, I would do. So I started writing the film, and I went back to my old outline I had written, years prior, and pretty much the same idea. It was always like, let's see what a week in the life of this character was, and so that's what this was. Like we followed that same idea, and we followed this character through a week of his life, and I knew there was like certain beats that I wanted, and I had a certain order. I knew the beginning and ending were going to mirror each other, and the rest of the film would have like different things and whatnot peppered out throughout the film. Um, Most of the scenes came pretty easy for the most part. The hardest scene was the for me in the writing process, and we kept writing it throughout the entire movie was the scene, the second to last scene. I think it's like on a Saturday where the French assassin goes to the person's house, and it's my sister who plays the character that comes in and basically starts trying to bargain for her life. That scene, oh my god, it went through so many iterations. We really like worked hard through it to try to get it. I remember that at one point I'd written it to be a male character, and it was the toughest scene that I had to do. But thankfully, I'm very pleased with the way the final version of the scene that I had written, which was actually after the final draft. It was while we were filming the movie. I rewrote it again. So I'm glad it came out the way it did. Casting was pretty easy in the sense that I knew who was gonna play who almost immediately. Um, uh, Basically, the French assassin was always going to be Brian. I remember I actually called him and I offered him the role, and at first he said no, and his reasoning was I can't do a French accent. And I told him, oh well, dude, in this movie you actually hardly say anything, and when you do, it's French. And so he was like, oh okay, because he thought maybe I could mimic the dialect of like random lines rather than trying to speak English with a French accent. So he accepted the part, thankfully. I always knew I was going to play the character Hick. That was just, I knew I had to do that. Brian and I had to have that face-off scene, as shown in the film. The character that comes in and sees the French assassin there in her house, that was always my sister. And the other two assassins, the one that is kind of like not the one that's asking for the date, but the other one, the one that's like, "What, you kill her, man? What are you talking about?" That was always going to be Holta. The character that's like, "Oh man, she's cute. I date her." From that scene, actually, that character was originally a male. That whole scene was written that it was two males, and what happened was I was reading the script one day, and originally I had a mutual friend of Brian and I's. His name is Nelson. I wanted him to play that part, and so we I was reading through that scene again. I think I was like planning out like what we were going to film and when, and I can't remember what I said specifically, but I made some offhand remark to my wife saying something like, I think I jokingly said, "Oh well, if something happens that Nelson has to step out, like if that day isn't free for him, like maybe you could do it." And I was like half joking saying it, and then my wife, in all earnest, was like, "Oh yeah, I totally do it." And I kind of like took a step back, and I'm like, "Man, I was being a dick." Like, let me look back at this, and I started rereading it, and I'm like, "Oh, dude, oh my god, you could totally have a woman play this character." And I started like really flirting with the idea because I'm like, that would actually be a really cool idea. You don't, first of all, there's not a lot of women in this movie. It's a sausage fest. And secondly, to have a lesbian character just to like, whip a little bit of like common ground, what's real in the world right now would be great. And I knew my wife could do it. I started rereading it, imagining her, and I'm like, yeah, I think she could do it. And so, yeah, I remember I made sure it was okay with Nelson because I offered the role to him, and I think he was so supportive, man, and I so thank him for it. He said something along the lines of, "Dude, if you're gonna put more women in your film and make it more inclusive, then I say go for it." So I really thank him for that because that really kind of gave me almost the blessing in a way to just like do it and not worry about anything. Um, in terms of locations, I wanted to film more than just my house. A lot of my previous films had pretty much been exclusively in my house, and so the movie didn't really need too many locations. It really only needed three locations. So I knew the main location would be my house, for the French assassin's house, if you would. And for the finale, I asked my friend Brian if I could use his house. And because I had never shot over there, I just wanted also an excuse to visit him because I hardly ever visit him, and I feel really guilty about that. And plus, it's a really he has a really nice apartment. I thought it would suit the scene, so we shot that over there, the last part of the film, and then the middle part with Hota and my wife. That I knew, like, when I went over to Holta's house and I when he got his new place and I was looking around, I'm like, oh my god, I'm so gonna film something here. And he was like, yeah, man, let's do it. And I was so happy that, I got to film there, and hopefully in the future, if he's down, there's future films I'd like to shoot there as well that I already have in mind. So we'll see. But yeah, location scouting and selection was actually very easy. And once all that was done, we had a script, we had a cast, we had locations, we had all the days set up. So yeah, we were ready to start filming. Production lasted 4 days, and they were spread across. I think it was like we shot roughly 1 day per month. I think is how it went. Yeah, I think that's how it was, and we wrapped up everything by, God, I think it was November. Yeah, it was November. We had wrapped everything, more or less. No, December. Sorry, we had wrapped everything. So it was, yeah, September, October, November, December. The last 4 months of the year we shot. So on the first day, I told it was just Brian. Like, that's the only person we shot that day, and it was here in my house for the location. And we shot all the calm scenes of the French assassin just doing what he does like every day. So we shot like the I think it's the two Sundays which mirror each other. So obviously when we shot the mirroring scenes, we would just shoot the same thing twice. I would tell Brian, "Okay, this is the happy one, which is the first Sunday we see." And I'm like, "This is the, oh god, it's been a hell of a week one." And we do the second take. And actually that had the only line that he had that day was the "Mais cheveux sont mers" that he did at the end. And Brian was really great. He would, like, we would go to Google Translate and see what the exact wording was. I had it in the script, but we would like go back and listen to it and just kind of like dissect it to see if it was like too literal of a translation or if it meant what it meant. And we did the best that we could. So anyone that speaks French, I apologize if this is appalling. We are we are just ignorant of how the language works, but we tried our best. So that was day one, and it was fun. It was a really cool, like, segue into filming. So a month later in October, we did day two. And day two was again here at my house, and it was basically three key scenes. We had the green screen shots, which I had bought for this film, and I'm going to use obviously in future films as well. I didn't feel comfortable trying to film on top of a real building, so I knew it was going to be green screen from day one. It came out fantastic. I mean, for what it was, it came with lighting kits that we used throughout the entire filmmaking process, and the actual scene itself was great. Brian was excellent. Knew exactly where to stand with the green screen and what to do, and we had perfect amount of space. I think the shoot went very well. We also did a really quick scene of Brian getting the assassination notice to go assassinate my wife and Holta. We just shot the only section that was here, and then of course we shot my scene. So I actually acted here, and this was the last. It was actually the last scene that we did, and it was really funny because in that scene, I did all of Brian's shots first. So any shot involving Brian was done first. And then and we did that because he actually had a date. And he was like running really late, and he was like, "Oh god, I gotta go, man, my date." And I'm like, "Oh." So actually in that scene, I was there when he was delivering his lines. I was there. So he would have, something to like read off of, and all that stuff, but and eye line and whatnot. But when I'm shooting my sides, I'm looking at a pillow because Brian was already downstairs, getting out of costume and putting on his his stuff and all this. So it was really funny to like just be there and doing all that. But I think everything went great. I had since it was my only scene, I really rehearsed hard, and I hope it's funny. I hope it's believable. We bought a lot of props for that character, and I had to stand on my leg for that one shot, and that was pretty tough just for that one shot. But I'm very pleased with how it came out, and I hope people dug it as well. So a month later, this would be November, I guess, at this point. Yeah, we did the third day, and it was funny because that week was so busy because we did the filming, and we knew that the following weekend we were going to be in Orlando. Um, so Holta was like, "Yeah, man, come over." I think we did it like a Sunday morning or something like that, or no, I think it was a Saturday morning, and he had just been to a college football game and was severely hungover. I told him, I'm sorry you're hungover, but this is actually great for your character because I think this suits, kind of like the point that he's at right now. And I think Holta captured that so well with the scenes. And it was his idea to be barefoot. His costume was his idea, and I thought he did such a great job. I think it's a great look for the character, and he knocked it out. He really did. I think he did a phenomenal job. And my wife, we had actually rehearsed that scene for a few weeks, and she was. I remember she was so nervous about it, and I told her, "Listen, you did so well in rehearsals. I think you're really gonna knock this out." And she did. She did such a great job with it. We had toyed with trying to rewrite the scene, her lines. I remember prior to filming, and we kind of like we couldn't really find a middle ground. Like it's just I think she interpreted the scene a little differently than me. Her ideas were great. I just didn't think it fit what I was trying to do. So we ended up just following the script. But I told her, listen, if you like miss a few words, it's fine as long as the essence of what we're trying to get here hits. So yeah, that was just a great scene. And then of course Brian appears at the end, so it was so funny because he just kind of hung around while we were filming, and then when we went to do his part, he got into character. We did the shot, and I remember he was like, "That's it," and I'm like, "Yeah, dude, that's it." He's like, "Oh my god!" And then we had pizza and we hung out for a little bit. It was a blast, man. I always love hanging out with the three of those people, Becca, my wife Rebecca, and my friends Holt and Brian. It's always like a huge blast, man. And it was great. So we shot that, and that whole scene was in the bag. The last day was in December, and we did it early December, so it was, before Star Wars, before, um, I mean, Star Wars the film. I mean, before all the things that were gonna happen with the holidays. My sister, we had to. I think we had to delay it by a week. We had like two dates that we had planned, and the second one was the one we ended up doing. But yeah, no, Brian and my sister were excellent. I knew they were going to be excellent, and they like exceeded my expectations. The scene I think came out really great. It didn't take us too long. Um, I know my sister has like a really big, lengthy scene, and that was the scene that I struggled writing. And so there was a bit of a struggle in the filming because we were trying to find, that point. And I think I was trying to find that point that felt right with that scene, since it was like, really, to me, it was the toughest scene that we had to create for the film. But in the end of it, I think it really, really came out great. I think everyone did a fantastic job, and I'm really happy with the end result. And yeah, when we did that, we were wrapped up on principal photography. Post production was actually fairly quick. I had the way I usually edit movies is when I have enough material that I feel like I could start cutting something together. I start doing that, and from day one, I felt like I had enough material. So I had already been editing the calm stuff, and then Brian and I had done the other stuff, the green screen shots. After day two, I pretty much had a film cut together, except for like two scenes. And then when we did the third day I had the whole movie basically done except for one scene. And then, so by the time I got around to editing, I basically just cut together my sister scene with Brian, and I had everything else like like a rough cut done. So usually the way it works is once I have something like a rough cut that I feel like it tells the bare bones of the story, I export it and I sit down with my wife and we watch it together. And afterwards, we just kind of discuss the movie. We discuss like what worked, what didn't work, what maybe should I reshoot, what should I do for this and that. And there wasn't really a lot of reshoots. The only reshoot we had to do was since I changed the gender of one of the characters, I had to go back and we had done a shot where it showed, when the assassin holds up something. That shot already looked pretty bad. I didn't like how it looked to read his instructions of who to assassinate. So I went back and I reshot that with a new messed up looking thing that didn't specify gender or anything like that, so it would make more sense. And so I kind of the movie was more or less finished. Um, I had a new logo done, created for Robohat Entertainment that was debuting with this movie, and the only thing was that I wanted to do while we were filming on, I think on one of the first 2 days, Brian and I had came up with an idea for for something really funny to put at the end of the movie, and I kind of expanded upon that, and that became it was the birth of the offended mustached party. So we did. I actually invited as many people that were available to come over that day, and it was our last pickup shot, and we all got together and we did this one quick scene. We all wore fake mustaches, and I think I'm the only one talking in the scene, and it was awesome, and that became the post-credit scene. So yeah, once that was shot and stuck into the movie, the film was completely done. And the thing was, it was December still, and I didn't want to. It was crazy with Christmas parties and all this stuff. So I said, you know what? Let's wait. Let's wait and let's do this. Let's release it in January. That'd be a first movie of 2020. The release of the movie was done in January. Like I mentioned earlier, the film was done in December, but January just made more sense because everything was a lot more clear, and there wasn't really a lot of stuff going on aside from New Year's Day. So we did what we normally do. I held a premiere party at my house. We had, if I recall correctly, I had French fries because it was the French assassin, and we had other foods. I don't remember what we made. And yeah, we had the whole thing ready, and I was so happy. Most of the cast came over. I think the only main cast member that couldn't make it was Holta, and that's because I think he had something planned for that day and he couldn't come over. But yeah, everyone came over. It was really great, and we saw the movie. It got a really positive reception. I was so happy people dug it. And then yeah, we ended up doing pickup shots. I'm sorry, not pickup shots. No, and then we ended up. I think the premiere party was on a Saturday, and that the following Monday, we released the movie on YouTube. And I always post it on YouTube in advance to see if it gets flagged for anything, and it did get flagged for things, but nothing that made the video like sound gets removed or anything like that. So yeah, it was released on YouTube, and I think it doesn't look. I promote it and I try to show people the movie as much as I can without shoving it down their throat. And then I kind of back away and let the movie do its own thing. So it doesn't have a lot of views, but for a Chris movie, it I think it's at 88 views, and I'm pretty happy about that. Obviously, I want as many people to watch this as possible, but for something that is just like a happenstance that someone watches it, that's pretty good enough to for me, honestly. But I hope that more people go out there and enjoy the film. So to wrap things up here, as we bring an end to this behind the scenes featurette, I just wanted to say a few kind of like a post mortem, if you would, for the film. The French Assassin with a Bad Comb Over is one of my favorite movies that I've made. I really think that this is the first movie in a new phase in my filmmaking journey. I've always said that phase one is what I called when I used to call myself a student filmmaker, and that was, in high school and throughout college, and that kind of I stopped really saying that around 2010, because I started realizing, you're always a student filmmaker, you're always learning. This is stupid to like keep calling myself that. Phase two was kind of like when I got back into making films around like 2012, 2015, around there. I just really started experimenting with how I made movies. I did things like Bachelor Party, Drunk Max, Stone Steve. I just, would make what I wanted to make the way I wanted to make it, just to see how did I feel about this, how would it be received from people, et cetera, et cetera. And with the French Assassin, I really feel like this is another stage. And I'm not quite, a new phase, like a phase three, and I'm not sure what I would call this phase quite yet. I guess you could call it the exploration phase, I guess, because my idea is to really explore a lot of ideas. I don't want to make sequels. I don't want to make features. I really just want to focus on working on short films of all these ideas I have, and like really just having fun with it and exploring, new worlds and new characters and new things. And I feel like the French Assassin of a Bad Comb Over is the first of that phase. And I love it, and I can't wait to see, with what else I create after this. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching this. If you've made it this far, or even if you saw a little bit at the beginning, it means a lot to me. I really enjoy doing these behind the scenes videos, and I hope to do more in the future with future movies I make. But for now, this is a wrap on this. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you around with more films in the future. Thanks again, guys. Take care.